Forget the speed and elegance of the great galleys. The ship that saved Europe in 1571 was a slow, massive monstrosity that no one wanted except the one man who knew its true purpose. This is the galleass. It's not a ship, it's a floating fortress, bristling with 4 forward cannons and a devastating broadside. In the stifling, humid heat of the Venetian arsenal, amidst the vast, echoing spaces, the smell of sawdust and brine hung heavy in the air. Here, beneath the towering, skeletal ribs of colossal, unfinished ships, naval engineer Marco Loredan, his face perpetually smudged with charcoal and his temper rubbed raw by bureaucratic friction, fought a losing battle against the Republic's conservative officials. His hands, thick and calloused, bore the permanent stains of pine pitch and tar, marking him as a man of the working docks, not the political courts. His blueprints, spread across a scarred workbench under the inadequate light of a single window, promised salvation, but to the council, they represented only ruinous expense and radical folly. "What we see, Master Loredan," the Doge's elderly representative drawled, his voice carrying the authority of generations of obsolete naval tradition, flicking a piece of sawdust from his pristine sleeve with an air of practiced indifference, "is a whale. A behemoth. It is far too slow. It requires a monumental crew, and the cost. You are asking us to mortgage the very foundations of the Republic, draining the coffers to build a handful of ships that require the output of 10 traditional yards. What good, sir, is a vessel that cannot outrun a Barbary corsair, let alone the swift, superior galleys of the Sultan? It is a monument to inefficiency." Marco slammed his open palm onto a massive timber spar, the sharp report echoing through the vast space. His frustration boiled over, fueled by the memory of recent Venetian defeats and massacres. "Speed is for skirmishes, Your Excellencies. This is not a skirmish, it is war, an existential war. The Ottomans took Cyprus, massacring every soul. They will throw 200 vessels against us, and their victory relies entirely on overwhelming numbers and speed. Our traditional tactics, the ram, the close quarters grapple, are negated by their sheer quantity. We cannot beat them by merely adding one faster ship to our line. We must shatter the line itself at the very moment of impact, where their speed is their greatest weakness." He grabbed a pointer and jabbed a thick, resolute finger at the drawing, emphasizing the technological revolution he proposed. "The innovation is the stability and the artillery placement. Look, unlike the traditional galley, which has a few small pivoting guns and low freeboard, the galleass has a reinforced, high-sided hull that can absorb continuous enemy fire. Its heavy armament is fixed, designed for broadside impact, not simple frontal defense. 4 heavy, bronze cannons face directly forward at the prow, capable of firing a continuous, devastating salvo. And here, along the sides, we have dedicated gun ports for heavy culverins, allowing it to fire a full broadside not just forward, but sideways. No Ottoman galley, built for rapid movement and ramming, has the structural integrity to withstand that kind of punishment. It will not be a ship, sirs. It will be a floating cannon battery." The official sniffed, adjusting his cuffs. "A slow, rich target. The enemy will simply row around it and leave it to flounder, or set it ablaze with fire ships. They will not have the luxury. We will place it at the very tip of our formation, far out. It will be an unyielding rock against which their initial, overconfident charge will shatter. Their light, fast hulls cannot approach it. It will be an armored fist thrust into the face of their crescent formation, forcing their entire line into chaos before the main melee ever begins." Marco's voice was now a powerful combination of plea and prophecy, detailing the exact tactical utility he envisioned. His argument, fueled by raw desperation and engineering brilliance, finally pierced the official's thick armor of complacency. The reality was grim. The Holy League was forming, and Venice had to bring more than just tradition to the table. After hours of agonizing debate, the council reluctantly approved the immediate completion of 4 of these vessels, a last-ditch, ruinously expensive experiment, viewed less as a strategy and more as a final, desperate prayer. They committed Venice's remaining wealth and manpower. "They will be ready for Messina, Master Loredan," the official warned, his tone frigid, the weight of the Republic's treasury heavy in his voice. Do not fail, because if this whale founders, it will take your reputation, the Republic's last hope, and perhaps the whole Christian fleet with it. Marco simply bowed, his mind already calculating the precise number of rounds, timber weights, and gun alignments needed. The Holy League was assembling, the storm was gathering, and Marco's weapon was racing against the clock. The fate of Christendom rested on the strength of its untested hull. The port of Messina was a swirling pandemonium of ambition, piety, and deep suspicion. The air was thick with the scent of salt water, sweat, gunpowder, and international resentment. The warships of the Holy League, the Papal States, Genoa, Savoy, Venice, and Spain bobbed shoulder to shoulder, their flags a frantic, colorful argument in the Mediterranean breeze. Every captain jockeyed for position, their commanders nursing ancient grudges and contemporary rivalries, delaying the inevitable departure. The young commander-in-chief, Don John of Austria, his face lined with the stress of his immense responsibility at the age of 24, was straining to hold the fractious, multinational alliance together. In the Venetian section, Admiral Sebastiano Venier, the grizzled commander of Venice's contingent, whose reputation was forged in the grinding defense of Candia, seethed at the ingrained caution and territorial pride of their allies. They speak of caution, Marco. Caution, Venier spat, gesturing towards a group of aloof Spanish officers who were carefully inspecting their velvet sleeves. The Turk is literally at our doorstep, demanding the final prize, yet these generals move with all the speed of a tax collector. Don John has his hands full keeping them from open brawling over which nation's banner flies highest. The object of the general skepticism was moored nearby, 3 massive, high-sided galleasses. They sat like monumental, brooding beasts, an affront to the low, sleek lines of the traditional galleys surrounding them. A group of Genoese and Spanish captains openly mocked them, pointing and laughing at their immense bulk. Look at the great whale. One rival captain scoffed, his voice loud enough to be heard across the water. It moves like a waterlogged timber raft. What good is a ship that cannot ram or outrun its enemy? It is nothing but a large, slow target, a costly folly. Venier fixed the man with an icy glare that could curdle wine. It does not need to ram, Captain. It needs to obliterate. We shall see whose folly is the greatest when the 2 lines meet. The crucial, high-stakes meeting was held in Don John's flagship, the Real. The room was suffocatingly crowded with admirals and officers, the air thick with the politics of war and the anxiety of the looming campaign. Don John, leaning forward, his eyes keen and focused, cut through the political preamble with the authority of a king's brother. Admiral Venier, Master Loredan, present your final plan for these galleasses. I need conviction, not compromise. Convince us they are not a liability, but an asset worthy of the immense risk we are about to take with the wealth and security of all Europe. Venier took the floor, his passion resonating through the cabin. The Ottoman fleet will outnumber us by 50 vessels. They will form a perfect crescent, designed to envelop our flanks and destroy us in a chaotic melee. Their entire strategy relies on the overwhelming momentum of their initial charge, which our line, however disciplined, cannot fully absorb. Marco unrolled a detailed chart of the Gulf of Patras, showing the proposed league formation. Our strategy is to break that momentum and shatter their formation before the 2 lines ever touch. We have 6 galleasses ready, 2 on the center division, 2 on the right, and 2 on the left. We will place them forward of our main battle line, by a considerable distance up to half a mile. They will take the entire brunt of the initial charge. A Spanish general rose, aghast, his face pale with disbelief. Proceed the line, half a mile. You intend to offer these ships as sacrifices. They will be sunk before the main battle is joined. They will not be sacrifices, Venier countered, slamming his fist on the table, the sharp report silencing the dissent. That is the genius of the design. The galleasses are fortresses. Before an Ottoman galley, driven solely by its narrow prow, can think of grappling, it must survive the 4-gun battery firing directly forward and the concentrated broadsides from the culverins. They have the range advantage. They will be the unyielding shield that absorbs the charge and the hammer that shatters their perfect order. Only then will our main galley line sweep in to finish the disarray. The audacity was breathtaking. The room erupted in fierce argument, detailing all the ways the radical plan could fail, but the grim necessity of the innovation was undeniable. Don John, listening intensely, saw the cold, brutal logic. The League could not win a conventional numbers game. They needed a disruptor, a revolutionary element. Don John stood. His voice, ringing with finality, silenced the room immediately. I have been charged to lead this fleet to victory. To win, we must not fight their war. We will adopt the Venetian plan. The 6 galleasses will lead. Their fire will be the signal for the rest of the League to advance. The untested weapon was now the vanguard. The fate of the Mediterranean hinged on 6 slow, stubbornly armored floating gun platforms. Don John's decision sealed the pact, a monumental gamble of faith in an engineer's radical vision. And no one, especially the approaching enemy, knew what was about to hit them. If you're finding this deep dive into naval history and technological innovation as captivating as we are, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel for more historical narratives and untold stories. Your support helps us bring these forgotten tales to life. The sun rose on October 7th, 1571, over the waters of the Gulf of Patras, bathing the 2 titanic fleets in a dreadful, golden light. It was a day of reckoning, a stage for the largest clash of galleys the world would ever witness. The Ottoman fleet, under the supreme command of Ali Pasha, was an astonishing, intimidating sight. Nearly 230 vessels stretched out in a magnificent, perfect crescent formation, a statement of centuries of naval dominance. Their masts bristled with the horsehair standards of the Sultan, a forest of threats promising a decisive victory. Ali Pasha stood on the deck of his flagship, the Sultana, a masterpiece of Turkish naval engineering. His admiral pointed toward the Christian line. They are transports, Pasha, overloaded Venetian merchantmen, clumsily converted. They are far too slow to fight and will be swamped and boarded within the first hour. They are of no military concern. Ali Pasha merely nodded, viewing the slow, high-sided vessels with curiosity, not fear. He would not alter his plan. His strategy was classic and proven. Drive the fleet forward with overwhelming momentum. Meanwhile, the 6 galleasses of Venice took their lonely, exposed positions over half a mile ahead of the main galley line. They sat like monumental, brooding beasts on the water. Aboard one of them, Admiral Venier gripped the rail, his face grim but resolute, scanning the immense Turkish threat. The tension was an almost physical thing, a terrifying silence before the storm. Marco Loredan stood beside Venier, his gaze fixed on the approaching crescent. They are coming, Admiral. They see us, but they do not fear us. They see a slow target. They do not see the trap. The Ottoman drums began to beat a deep, rhythmic thumping that vibrated across the water, the thunderous signal for the full charge. The great crescent began to move, thousands of oars churning the sea into foam, bearing down on the Holy League. On the reel, the great banner of the crucifix was raised. Priests moved among the crews, offering last-minute absolutions. The Holy League offered their prayers and steeled their resolve. As the Ottoman fleet surged forward, their commanders, utterly confident, aimed for the gaps between the massive, unfamiliar Christian ships, prioritizing the vulnerable line behind them. Ali Pasha saw a transport. He failed to see the trap. The first wave of fast, light galleys did not slow. They surged ahead. Marco watched them come, his fingers white on the trigger lanyard of the lead bombard. They were so close now, he could see the eager, expectant faces of the enemy oarsmen. "Wait for the signal," Venier commanded, his voice unnervingly calm. The moment of impact was seconds away. The trap was set, its jaws open wide, ready to snap shut on an unsuspecting, overconfident foe. The air was ripped apart not by the expected clash of hull against hull, but by a sound far more terrible, the coordinated roar of heavy naval artillery. Fire! Admiral Venier's voice was lost in the shattering concussion. The 6 galleasses erupted simultaneously in smoke and flame, their massive reinforced hulls absorbing the recoil without flinching. The first wave of Ottoman galleys, driven by sheer momentum and speed, were slammed by a concentrated, devastating barrage. The forward-facing four-gun batteries, firing heavy iron balls, tore through the fragile, low-sided hulls of the Turkish vanguard. The effect was instantaneous and horrific. The first dozen Ottoman ships were pulverized. Hulls shattered, oarsmen were swept overboard in a torrent of splintered wood and flesh, and entire sections of decking were vaporized. One fast Ottoman galley, intent on a quick flanking maneuver, was caught broadside by the port battery of a galleass. The concentrated shot ripped a gaping, massive hole in the vessel, causing it to instantly founder. "Reload. Maintain fire discipline. Rapid fire." Marco bellowed, the adrenaline fueling his command, his voice raw with the thrill of battle. His weapon was working, exceeding his wildest engineering hopes. The carnage was a catastrophic strategic disruption. The lead Ottoman wrecks were suddenly in the direct path of the ships following them. The perfect crescent formation, the key to Ali Pasha's strategy, was immediately broken. Commanders were forced to veer violently to avoid the burning debris, to slow down, or to clump up. The disciplined, swift assault dissolved into a chaotic, jammed-up mass of vessels. The galleasses became immovable, bone-crushing barriers. They were a shield that was also a hammer. As the Turks struggled to grapple, even the desperate boarding attempts by the janissaries were repelled. The galleass's sheer height and reinforced bulwarks, combined with continuous handgun fire, created a killing zone. The elite troops were rendered impotent by the height of the enemy deck. Ali Pasha felt a cold dread as he watched the center of his formation become a tangled knot of wreckage. The transports were floating artillery platforms, and they were tearing the heart out of his formation. His front line was a fractured, confused mess of burning timber. The galleasses continued their relentless, methodical fire, pounding the disarray. They had absorbed the initial, critical momentum of the charge and turned it back on itself. The chaos was complete. Now, from behind the smoke-shrouded, unmoving galleasses, the main line of the Holy League Don John's center, Venia's left, and Colonna's right surged forward. The League's galleys swept toward an enemy that was not arrayed in a disciplined line, but was already broken, scattered, and demoralized. The main fight, the chaotic melee, was about to begin. The main battle line of the Holy League surged forward through the gaps created by the galleasses. The battle instantly devolved into a sprawling, chaotic, close-quarters melee. The League's traditional galleys met an enemy that was confused, slowed by the wreckage, and already psychologically battered by the loss of their vanguard. Every ship became an island, and every deck a slaughterhouse. The climax centered on the massive flagship engagement. Don John's reel, driven by fury and adrenaline, crashed into Ali Pasha's Sultana. For an hour, the two flagships were locked in a death grip, a desperate, bloody struggle between the finest soldiers of both sides. The League's forces prevailed. Ali Pasha was struck down, and his head was raised on a pike, a definitive, shattering blow to the Ottoman morale. The galleasses, now moving at their slow, ponderous best, continued to dominate the scattered remnants. They had shifted from defense to offense, acting as inescapable artillery platforms. A large group of Turkish galleys attempted a desperate retreat, trying to escape the carnage and flee up the Gulf. They were met by the relentless, long-range fire of the heavy guns, which methodically pounded the scattered ships into submission. The Ottoman commanders realized that even their speed could not save them from the Venetian behemoths. By late afternoon, the Gulf of Patras was a scene of unparalleled devastation. The Ottoman fleet, which had sailed out so confidently that morning, was shattered, its power broken. Nearly 200 vessels were captured or sunk. Over 30,000 men were lost, a staggering, irreparable loss of manpower that would cripple the Sultan's navy for a generation and shift the balance of power decisively in the Mediterranean. As the sun began to set, Marco Loredan stood on the battered, smoke-stained deck of his galleass. Admiral Venier approached, his armor scarred, his face a mask of exhaustion and profound relief. "It is over, Marco," Venier whispered. "It is done. The sea is ours again. We owe this victory to a design no one trusted." Marco nodded, his eyes fixed on the distant, retreating sails of the few surviving Ottoman vessels. they are no longer invincible. We taught them a lesson in mathematics, Admiral, that heavy artillery, properly positioned and protected, can overcome any number of light vessels. The era of the galley is finished. The galleass had been the secret weapon, the linchpin that absorbed the charge and shattered the formation. The conservative officials, the mocking captains, and the overconfident Sultan were all proven wrong by the brutal reality of naval firepower. The Battle of Lepanto was over. The age of the fast galley was dead. The future of naval power belonged to the cannon, and Marco Loredan's floating fortresses had announced the new era with a deafening, victorious roar. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Battle of Lepanto and the incredible story of the galleass. If you want to uncover more fascinating tales, remember to subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the secret weapon, and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts.